The physical union of a man and a woman, in essence, is a supernatural act, a reminiscence of paradise, the most beautiful of all hymns of praise dedicated to the Creator by its children. It is the Alpha and the Omega of all creation. Samael Aum Ve'ar, the mystery of the golden flower. Welcome to our live program. Today is Saturday, May 9th, 2020. Today we're going to talk about the sexual energy, a fundamental and transcendental topic that pertains to the whole of humanity, but very few understand its origin and its evolutive, involutive, and revolutionary nature. Therefore, we dedicate this roundtable to humanity and especially to Gnostic students of all levels, instructors and missionaries, without distinction of any kind. For humanity, it is very difficult to value or appreciate something that did not cost us an effort to obtain. This also applies to the sexual energy. Generally, we are only aware of the sexual energy in its relation to reproduction of the human species, and therefore we unconsciously waste this energy's spiritual and psychological potentiality. Nevertheless, this same energy is a reason for life, why we are alive, and how we came to this world. Today, we would like to give a warm welcome to Christian Vallejo and Adolfo Suero, both instructors of the Gnostic Society, who will share with us and reflect and inspire us to a deeper understanding of the origins of the sexual energy, as well as the revolutionary and transcendental process of the transformation of this energy in the life of an initiate. For the transformation of the initiate is the transformation of his or her inner universe. Thank you very much, guys, for your presence on Coradi Radio once again. We'd like to welcome from New York City, United States, Christian Vallejo.
Thank you, Aníbal. Thank you for joining us.
And our next guest is joining us from New Zealand. Originally, he is in Saratoga Springs, United States. However, due to his travels, he is joining us live from New Zealand. Adolfo Suero, welcome.
Thank you, Aníbal. Thank you, Christian, Elio, and all the team of Coradi Radio, and all listeners. We're very happy to be here sharing this beautiful and transcendental teaching, as it was mentioned in the introduction.
Very well. We'll go ahead and begin with the origins of the sexual energy. If you could tell us about this marvelous voyage of the energy from the absolute all the way until it reaches our sexual organs.
Thank you all of you who are joining us this evening or morning, wherever you are. We're happy to be here with you to share these wonderful teachings with you. So thank you for connecting with us. And thank you, Aníbal and Elio, for giving us the opportunity to come on board and share some time with you. So as you were saying in your introduction, I couldn't agree more. These teachings have, to some of us that have been in the teachings for a while and have been practicing the teachings for a while. If anything, one of the things that Gnosis has brought to us is it has reminded us of the cause or the origin or the purpose of some of the different energies, right, that we all have. The sexual energy, and I like the fact that you said, that usually as a humanity we don't really appreciate something if we don't know its origin, if we don't really understand it, we don't really appreciate it. And unfortunately, in society, we've never really been taught about the origins of the sexual energy, why we have the sexual energy, or maybe we know why we have it, or one perspective of why we have it, which is, as you mentioned, Most of us are familiar with just the reproductive aspect of the sexual energy, as Master Samael explains. Most of us are only familiar with the generative aspect of the sexual energy, but very few of us are aware of its regenerative aspect, of its the role that the sexual energy plays in our evolution, in our evolutionary nature, whether just as physical human beings or as psychologically and spiritually, right? So let's talk about that. Let's see, where does the sexual energy come from? The sexual energy gave origin to everything that is. And if we study the different spiritual traditions, the different sacred texts, always, of course, stories that are veiled on behind a lot of symbolism, right? But most of them, at the very core, as Master Samael so bluntly states clearly in his works, the sexual energy is the root of all creation, right? All of us are here because of the sexual energy, right? All of us came from the sexual energy of our parents, right? We are, if anything, crystallization or a different modification of the sexual energy of to human beings, right? And so when we study the origin of life and from the different spiritual traditions, they all relate to to physical creation as having originated from God or from the source, from the void, whatever name we want to give it. And it happened in a process of unfolding of that energy from spiritual energy down into what we call material energy, right? And so we have a lesson in our Introduction to Gnosis program in the Gnostic Society based on the lecture on the lecture, or the chapter rather, of one of Master Samael's books, in which he talks about this concept of the sexual hydrogen C12, in which he invites us to understand what the sexual energy is and how the sexual energy is created. Most of us know in the Gnostic tradition that the sexual energy is the result of everything, right? It's the product of everything that we eat, everything that we breathe, and everything that we think. And not only the sexual energy is a crystallization of all of those things, but also the quality of what we eat, the quality of our thoughts or emotions, and the quality of the air that we breathe, right, affects the quality of our sexual energy. And so then, understanding this allows us to see that everything that, if anything, at least from a biological point of view, we understand that one of the most important tasks of any living organism, right, is to reproduce. And so all of the things that we eat, as I said, the things that we eat, the air that we breathe, we have this marvelous human body, human machine that transforms, right? An apple, as you take it into your mouth, you chew it, you transform it, right? The body takes all of that and it transforms it into basically energy, right? And that energy has its foundation in the sexual organs. It's the quintessence, you can say, or it is the energy that the physical body produces that gives us the ability to reproduce ourselves. But that is not the only function of the sexual energy, as we explain in Gnosis. The sexual energy, since it is energy, it is vitality. It empowers, right? It maintains the vitality of the physical body, and also sustains our psychological aspect, and also allows us to connect even with the spirit. And I have a quote here that's a very interesting quote before I go a little deeper. from Sigmund Freud, and he gives insight into the importance of the sexual energy. As you know, Sigmund Freud always talked about the libido, and he actually said that the libido, this same the sexual energy as we know it in Gnosticism, is the root of all of our impulses, right? And the quality of your sexual energy, and we say this in Gnosis, the quality of your sexual energy influences your emotions and influences your thoughts, right? And I found this very interesting quote by Sigmund Freud. He says, "Sexuality is the key to the problem of the psychoneuroses and of the neurosis in general. No one who disdains the key will ever be able to unlock the door." Right? And so even from modern psychology, they were recently tapping into this, the importance of the sexual energy, and even obviously Sigmund Freud talked a little bit about it. So from an esoteric point of view, where does the sexual energy come from? Well, the sexual energy comes from God. The sexual energy comes from the source of everything, right? From the absolute, using the Kabbalistic terms. And just to give you an idea, I'm going to read a little explanation from one of our Gnostic brothers, Rafael Vargas, who gave this very simple explanation of the sexual energy. And I want you guys to hear this and just reflect on it before we move on to the next topic. So he says how we have 12 salts in the sexual energy, right? And you'll remember right now. You'll remember the words of Jesus come to mind when he says, "You art the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salt again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot." Right? And so the salt, from an alchemical perspective, is that substance that gives shape to matter. It fixes the elements within matter, right? And so it is said, and now even we know this also in medicine, that the body has 12 salts, right? And those 12 salts, the sexual energy has those 12 salts. Those 12 salts correspond to the 12 salts of the body. But where do those 12 salts come from? Those 12 salts, or that number 12, is very symbolic, right? We have the 12 zodiacal signs. We have the 12 disciples of Jesus. Even Buddha had 12 disciples, and so forth, right? So it's very interesting. And so those 12 salts come from the 12 cosmic vibrations that correspond to the 12 categories of matter, right? They correspond to the zodiac, okay? And obviously, every year has 12 months, and so throughout the year, we're receiving these vibrations from the zodiac, which enter through, right? Through the food that we eat, through the air that we breathe, and through the impressions, which are all transformed into sexual energy. So it's interesting what Rafael Vargas is saying here. So, and he continues saying, from that sexual energy, there's a connection with our bones, with our flesh, with our circulation, with the whole organism. And I want you to see how that came about, right? What's the relationship between the sexual energy and your bones? Well, because it all emerged from that sexual energy, right? The sexual energy from your father came into and mixed within the womb of your mother. It mixed, it fused with her sexual energy, and then those substances together begin to create this physical body that we have, right? And so then this just gives us an idea, and it really blows my mind, and how sacred and how powerful this simple energy, simple in the way we think that it's just a very simple energy, and we don't really use it. Honestly, I think we are used by it, but we never really use it. And so Rafael Vargas continues to say, those 12 salts correspond to the 12 parts of the being. Those 12 parts of the being are intelligent parts. Therefore, and he invites us to reflect, right? The body is built from a 12-part intelligence. That intelligence is genetic memory. Literally, memory that comes, right? And I'm adding this, literally memory that comes from the stars, right? And even scientists are telling us that we are literally star dust. Now, if we came from the sexual energy, where do you think that the stars and the universe came from? From the sexual energy, from the sexual creative energy of the one, right? And so when we are working with the sexual energy, we have this inheritance that comes from the stars. And so when we lose our sexual energy, what do we lose with it? Right? We lose our energetic memory. We disconnect from the 12 parts of the being, right? And so when we lose our sexual energy, we empty ourselves of all of this energy. And this is why it's very common for Gnostics all around the world to begin to experience memories of previous lives, insights into the mysteries of the universe, when they begin to transmute their sexual energy, right? And so all I'm saying is that we're usually, again, just aware of the generative aspect of the sexual energy, but what about when the energy is not being used for the reproduction of the race? Let's meditate on that, right? And obviously, if we go to the Gnostic tradition, then the Gnosis tells us that we can use that energy to not only maintain the health of the physical body, to not only reproduce ourselves, but also to create more life within ourselves, to empower our consciousness and to grow as spirits. And I believe this is why we're giving this talk. And yeah, that's what I have for you. And I'd like to now pass on the mic to Adolfo.
Adolfo, can you please tell us the importance of the sexual energy and what is the reason why this energy is so important to everyone, any human life, but most especially in the life of someone in the initiatic path?
To understand that the same energy in another manifestation, the same energy that create the cosmos and solar systems and galaxies and planets and the organisms that reside or live in those planets come from those particles or those atoms that, after all the process of you mentioned, eating well, breathing the oxygen or the prana that comes within the oxygen, and a process of being processed by our organism, which is, we don't think about it, it's just happening instinctively. And you got the final product, and all this process is like a factory. This process of transformation, is verified as the sexual energy in our sexual glands. So, what is so important? What is in these particles and these atoms in creation that are related with the sexual energy? Why is the sexual energy so important? Well, like Christian said, if we observe the qualities, one of them is the creative quality, which without that we wouldn't be having this conversation, or we wouldn't be able to be in this world. Without the sexual act, this race will not exist, will be extinct. So when we talk about the creative aspect of it, just from the word creation or creative, it gives us a sense of something sacred, divine, because not every substance has the power of creating. So the only substance with the capacity of creation within ourselves is the sexual energy. So we have to take that into account. And like everything else in the cosmos, this sexual energy could be used to create or to destroy. So have another particular aspect. This is why we need to know how to manage this energy. Unfortunately, we do not know the psychological process beyond what we call, or what humanity calls, love, and this energy start to being misused to the point that we see, not recently, this is a problem that for decades, in which people in their 20s are losing already their sexual potency because it haven't been developed. It should be, developed completely at the age of 21 years old, but we're taking that energy out of our bodies since earlier age. So creating a big problem because those atoms of magnetism, electricity, willpower, light that were used to create all this cosmos, including us as a human organisms, and all the kingdoms are being wasted along with that sexual water. And because we don't know the law of alchemy, for example, we cannot understand the importance of this energy. Not just that, but even for those that are in these studies, one of the main obstacles that we create to ourselves is that in order for us to understand the importance of the sexual energy, we need to start first to save it. And then use the tools that we learn in order to not lose that energy, in order to apply those atoms that we just mentioned, what includes all those qualities, and create a new cosmos within ourselves, which is the sexual energy is the root of a new order in creation. And that's another aspect of the sexual energy, another quality why it's so important, is that the sexual energy, when it's used properly, it creates order within ourselves, organizes our psychology as is being used to organize the cosmos. It's also helping us to organize our psychology, organize our organs in such a way that harmonize them. The person that start losing his sexual energy, depending on the amount of the amount of vital energy that sustains the physical health of a person, goes directly linked to the use of the sexual waters. And another reason why it's so important, because it has a magnetic power. Without magnetism, creation cannot be taking place. Therefore, what happened is that in order for us, the sexual energy can be used in a superior way or an inferior way. So when we talk about magnetism, in order for us to attract organization, order, health, wealth, not just physical, but also even financial, we need to attract or have that energy within ourselves, at least a little bit. Because no matter, sometimes it is how the ego kicks in, and we are, looking for wealth. When I'm talking about wealth is, for example, happiness, and we start looking that outside ourselves, including with relationships. And then it comes with money. It can, we enter into relationships based on things that do not have anything to do with the real purpose of the sexual energy and what it's for and what it implies, why it's so transcendental, what is so important, because the sexual energy is the reason why an initiate, depending on how it treats its own sexual energy, the sexual energy will become that substance that will guide the initiate in its esoteric path. Another aspect is that the sexual energy, with the exercise of transmutation, we'll talk, some of us or most of us are familiar with, will change the vibration because everything is sound. When we do a hand sack practice, for example, as a single or married person, because you can do it in both cases, it must be done in both cases. The vibration of that exercise will send such a vibration to your brain, to your nervous system, that it will be less complicated, for example, to concentrate, to meditate, which is another quality of the proper use of the sexual energy. Another aspect is, for example, the application, the use of the techniques that we receive in the teachings, like self-observation, remembering yourself, etc. For example, how can we apply those tools if we don't have energy? It will be a big contradiction. What happened is that we can use those tools, but in the mechanical way, as per the sexual energy is being used by an ego. For example, we call it lust. We can call it any name. The lack of understanding of how sensations work, because it's an addiction. Lust in its different manifestations, as in any different manifestation of any defect, it's just an addiction to the sensation that it produces. So what happened is that we apply the techniques that we are learning in Gnosis in a mechanical way. If we start observing ourselves, it's not to discover our defects, but to hide our defects from other people. And it's a mechanical self-observation because it implies fear, implies mechanical elements. Another aspect is that the sexual energy contains light, power, creative potential, as we explained that, or Christian did. But when we transmute that energy, do not let it go, transform that energy, those aspects are the ones that are nourishing not just our nervous system, or physical body, every cell, or blood, etc. But also, it helps us to locate ourselves, psychologically speaking. It dissipates the mental laziness. It dissipates any kind of doubts or uncertainty. Even when you don't know that you don't know, in certain situations, you are you're in a state of mind that will allow you to organize all the elements to make a concept, or to make or to take action towards it. So another aspect is that because it has a creative quality, this substance has a creative quality, it's linked directly to karma. And because it's directly linked to karma, we need to know that when we have a sexual contact with a person, and Master Samal talks about this, we need to know this and remember this ourselves all the times. When we mix, because it's in the blood, the sexual substance, the atoms of the law is everywhere, and then we mix this substance with a sexual act, for example, we assume those psychological profiles of the people that we have been in contact, and it's the quickest way to transmit karma from one person to another, to one essence to another. And it's another way to complicate yourself and put more obstacles in our own work if we are already in Gnosis, because this lecture is dedicated to everybody. But for us, that we are in these teachings, we need to know that instead of helping ourselves, we are complicating our initiatic path more and more and more. So we have to be very careful about that. We're assuming not just those psychological profiles and complicating our own energies, but at the same time, we are acquiring other people's karmatic weight. So, in other words, just to wrap up this aspect of why the sexual energy is so important, is that in order for us to understand these words, or this talk, this information, we need to first stop misusing that energy. When we decide, okay, I hear this lecture 1 time, 10 times, 30 times, I still don't get it. Okay, well, I guess it's time for us to stop misusing the sexual waters and see what happened. See how our psychology, the conditioned aspect of our psychology, is going to protect, it's going to kick, it's going to find many excuses, and some of them are found in the ego finds justifications. It's like the hidden line in the law to get away. You know, attorneys probably will understand what I'm saying, but you find a gap in there, and then the ego says, "Oh, but my teacher says this about my personal situations." Well, if anything in life is more important than the energy that create the whole cosmos, please send me an email and let me know, or reach out to me, because I have no idea what that could be. Okay, so in order for us to understand these words of Christian and all the instructors and all the teachers and life itself that is trying to teach us, but we're asleep, we cannot perceive that information. So somebody, avatars and masters, have to come and unveil the information. Let's, set up a goal. What will happen? Day 10, without misusing the sexual energy, also not just in the sexual glands, but also in the mind, with lustful thoughts, or lustful justifications to execute the action, whatever, you name it. Whatever you will do in regards to protect your sexual energy will give you the same amount of comprehension of why it's so important. Because these qualities that we are talking about, why it's so important, can be understood only by the person that protects his sexual waters. Otherwise, it's going to be just one concept, like any other. And once you understand, or we understand little by little, those properties, those qualities, then we can see like a light at the end of the tunnel, because we can see the benefit of doing, or why some people become in the initiatic path successful, and why so other people say, no, this is not for me. This is not for me. This is for the instructor. This is for Christian, Adolfo, or this master. No, it's not meant for me. No, because if you are getting this information in these times, it's meant to be for you. So the sexual energy, when we transmute it, if it's associated with the psychological work, will not leave any room for self-compassion. The sexual energy is the one that conduces you through the path. If we don't have it, there's no light, there's no magnetic power, there is no willpower, there is no success, because you don't have that within yourself. How can we expect that from the outside world? It's why we are so into impressing ourselves with external things.
So far, you guys have covered the origins of the sexual energy, the importance of the sexual energy, and Adolfo, you just started to go into a little bit about the management or channeling of the sexual energy. You mentioned Hamsa. So now I'm going to ask Christian if you could please go into more in depth to orient on how to deal with this powerful energy, especially the single people.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Anibal. So in Master Samael has given us two very powerful exercises for sexual transmutation, and the one that I personally love and has always been my to-go practice is the one that Adolfo just mentioned, the practice with the Hamsa. This breathing technique / mantra / meditation practice has the ability to activate the positive and negative polarities that we all have within ourselves, right? As Master Samael explains, that the Hamsa is like it's a practice that allows us to create or to extract energy, right? He explains that we have a nuclear plant in our sexual organs, and like any nuclear plant, when that nuclear plant is on, it's turned on, it begins to create fire, and we can all feel that fire, right? And that fire awakens sometimes randomly, or when we're in love and we see the opposite sex, that fire awakens, right? And it's important for us also just to point out that even though in Gnosticism when we talk about the sexual energy, we also like to make a distinction that we have sexual energy that is that naturally arises from it's a biological need, right? It's a biological craving that we all have. It's a type of food, as it is explained in one of Master Samael's books, the Pankatattva ritual. Right, it's a type of food that the body craves, and so when the sexual center is wants that nourishment, it awakens the fire, right? And so what we can do in that moment is take that fire, raise the fire up through our spinal column, right? We take a deep breath in, bring that energy all the way to the top of the head. We hold the energy there, and then we release down into the heart. And as we inhale, we obviously mentally, right, with our hearts, as we inhale, we pronounce the mantra Ham, make that energy rise, right? And then exhale, and we bring through the mouth. We exhale about 60% of the breath through the mouth, and then the rest through the nose. Okay, we don't exhale all of the air through the mouth, but only about 60%, and then the rest through the nose. We bring that energy down to the heart, right? I do have a couple of videos actually on my YouTube channel that I remember and I got ready for you. If you have, I'm sure that most of you are either on your computers or your cell phones. So you can type down, you can find a couple of videos where I explain this specific exercise. The first video, if you go on YouTube, it's called, I titled that one Kundalini Transmutation Exercise Explained. Okay, you'll find the New York City Gnostic Education channel there. You'll be able to find that, and it's this. I explain in detail, right, how to perform this wonderful practice that Master Samael teaches in his books. But I think a video it's always better, right? So Kundalini Transmutation Exercise Explained. Okay, you'll go there, you'll watch the video, and you'll see the explanation on how to transmute as a single person, right? Because we need to learn to begin to transmute this sexual energy as a single person, and then obviously we're going to learn about sexual transmutation in the sexual practice and the embrace with your partner, which is of a Not necessarily. Well, I don't want to use the word higher to and have you guys think that it is a more powerful practice, but it doesn't mean that the practice of sexual transmutation as a single person is less valuable, right? As a matter of fact, we all have to practice sexual transmutation, whether we are in a relationship or we're not in a relationship. We have to transmute our sexual energy every day, because your physical body is creating sexual energy every single day, right? And so some of that energy you use for the vitality of the body, to have the energy to do the things that you have to do during the day. But we should learn to take in some of that energy for ourselves, right? So we use all of that energy for the world. We give all of our energy to the world, and it's important for us to begin to learn to take some of that energy for ourselves, to nourish ourselves with that energy as well. And this is why the practice of sexual transmutation is so important, right? And so this is one way in which we can transmute the sexual energy, through the powerful mantra Hamsa. Another exercise is by using what Samuel Vero calls the Christic Egyptian pranayama. And I also have another video on my YouTube page. I gave a lecture just a few weeks ago on breathing techniques, right? So you'll find there, you'll find it on my page. You'll see there a class on breathing techniques. And there I explained this practice of the Christic Egyptian pranayama. You can also YouTube Christic Egyptian pranayama, and you'll see other videos there that explain how to do this practice. It's the practice of the alternating breath, right? And again, it's all related to breathing techniques that allow you to raise that energy up, right? All the way up to the head and into the heart, right? We're also transmuting our sexual energy when we are fully present, when the heart chakra, when the anahata chakra is awakened, it's open. It automatically transmutes that sexual energy, and you'll notice that when you are experiencing a moment of just being, a moment of being fully present, of experiencing love, the love of your being, the love of God within you, how does that feel? You feel that your energy naturally rises. You feel like you're looking up towards the heavens, right? When you look at the sky, when you look at a sunset and you're captivated by the sunset, this emotion opens up in the heart, this wonderful warm emotion of love opens in the heart. In that moment, we usually naturally, right? What do you usually do when you look at a sunset or something beautiful from nature that captivates you? You usually breathe in, right? We all do that. We usually take it in, and we bring that into the heart, right? I'm sure that you can all relate to this right now. If you close your eyes for a moment and you remember a beautiful sunset, a beautiful beach, right? A mother nourishing, taking care of her child. Wonderful, loving expressions that we see in nature. In those moments, we naturally we want to take that inside and allow that to be part of us, part of ourselves, right? That is sexual transmutation. That is sublimation. Sublimation is to elevate, right? To transform and offer it up to our higher self, to our spirit, right? And so remember that in order, and the key in all of this, as I've been saying, is love. Without love, there is no inspiration. Without inspiration, there is no will to do anything, right? And so this is why right now we're giving this talk. Some of you, I think most of you that are listening are in Gnosis or have been in Gnosis for a little bit. Some of you might be new, and if you are, this is why you'll see that all of the different spiritual traditions before, what is the first quality, the first step into practicing or entering into a spiritual path or religion? Love. We need to learn to love. We need to learn to love our being, our spiritual nature. That's why, again, Jesus said that in loving one another, that's how you will prove that you're my disciples, right? And so why? Because when you're in love, when you feel love in your heart, you naturally feel like you want to go in and you want to bring everything around you within you. This is why you hug your partner, why you hug your family members, because you want to become one with them. And that is what we do when we are transmuting our sexual energy. We're becoming one. We're bringing everything in. Everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. We are bringing in the love, the joy that we're experiencing, or even the inferior emotions that we're experiencing, negative emotions. When you transmute your sexual energy, you rise those energies, you elevate the vibration of those inferior, dense emotions, and they become, and you feel yourself becoming lighter and lighter and lighter until hate is turned into love, laziness is turned into diligence, activity of the consciousness, lust is turned into love, pride is turned into humility, which is a state of being in which we don't feel ourselves more or less than anything around us, right? We feel equal, we feel connected. That's humility. There's no greed. Greed disappears because in that moment you begin to fill yourself with what you need, which is love, which is life, which is presence, right? And so really sexual transmutation has been that missing key that I think Sigmund Freud was referring to, as I mentioned in the beginning. Sexual transmutation is the missing key, right? So think about this, right? When you're not using your sexual energy to procreate or to use the sexual energy to move the physical body, there is another way, right? And this is what I love about Gnosis. It has opened a new possibility. There's something else that you can be doing with this energy, but we have to try it out, right? And the more that you do this practice, the more that you fall in love with it, the more love that you feel. And as you do that, when you go back and you experience normal sexuality, or when you lose your sexual energy, you feel like you're actually losing something. And this is why we say that, don't lose your sexual energy or don't waste it, because this is literally what's happening. You're wasting an opportunity, right? Don't see it as, we don't like to see it as it's evil, it's sinful, and or any of that, right? It's not. But rather that it's just that you're losing an opportunity to experience something new, right? To expand something new. I also have a wonderful book that I recommend for, besides Master Sama wrote a wonderful book on sexual transmutation. It's called The Mystery of the Golden Blossom. That's a very esoteric perspective on sexuality and on sexual transmutation. And there is also, I've come across, my wife came across a wonderful book. It's called Cupid's Poison Arrow, and I recommend it all the time because in this book, the author actually begins to study sexuality from a biological, scientific point of view. What happens within the body when you lose your sexual energy and when you transmute your sexual energy, and it turns out that the body is healthier when the person transmutes their sexual energy. The person is healthier, is more has more vitality, is more loving. It leads to deeper personal connections. So that's a wonderful book, Cupid's Poisoned Arrow. Yeah, and then so we have the transmutation with the Hamsa. We have the what we call the Christic Egyptian pranayama, and again, being out in nature, walking, running. When you are running, you're transmuting your sexual energy, right? When you start to jog, you begin to breathe in a certain way that brings your energy, moves the energy in your body. And if you're walking, if you're running, and you on top of that bring in self-remembering, which is to remember yourself, to remember your consciousness, to remember that feeling of being in the heart, then that naturally allows you to transform, to transmute the sexual energy. There's also music that allows us to transmute our sexual energy. I recommend Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, especially the third and fourth movements of that symphony are very powerful. If you sit there with that symphony, it helps you elevate your energy. It opens your heart. There's also certain types of kirtan music that I have found in the past couple of years very powerful. There's an artist called Krishna Das, very amazing musician who, when you listen to his music, at least some songs, it puts you into that state, into that natural state of just wanting to take everything into the heart and elevating yourself. And so transmutation is an offering. It's an offering to your higher self. It's an offering to yourself, to nourish. It's an offering or a type of food that you offer your inner being to nourish that aspect of your being. And so I think in the next segment, I'll talk more a little bit about the fruits of the sexual transmutation. But yeah, so that's what I have to share with you in relation to transmutation as a single person. So thank you, Aníbal.
Okay, thank you. So now, Adolfo, if you can go into or just talk about what implies being in a alchemical partnership.
Well, thank you, Aníbal. Thank you, Christian, for the practical explanation of what it means to be single in relation with the transmutation. This work of understanding the nature, the process, transformation of the sexual waters is a work of self-education. So we have, and this topic goes for every person, even those that for different reasons cannot transmute. It could be an older person, can be somebody that have health problems, and I will go more in deep on the last segment, but this class is for everybody. And Master Samael, something that I didn't mention, and Master Samael says that he calls those atoms that we receive with the sun from the cosmos, he called it Christic atoms. So what we are talking about here is we are talking about the travel of the Christic energy through the whole life, through the whole process of creation, life, organic life, or organic life as a human, but also when we talk about the transcendental aspect of it, is the return of this substance with the mastery, being awakened, being worked out, back to the absolute. It's like the prodigal son going back home after this long travel of darkness and misuse of the assets that were given by its father. So let's keep that in mind, and let's continue. Yes, I will talk about transmutation and alchemical marriage. In Gnosis, as a single person, we get very excited to know that there could be another way to approach a relationship. some aspects that we might take into account is that if we're still single, if not, we still should keep these points present, so we don't where's the word? We don't go in circles when we can actually go straight to the point in life, especially in the initiatic path. Because in this teaching, we say that time is relative and etc. do not exist, etc. But come on, we see ourselves in the mirror. We are not the same people that we were 10, 20, 30, or better live there, years ago. So, and the energy is also decreased. So we have to be very careful how we approach this subject. When I say that it's a work of self-education, what I mean is that we need a certain level of awakening in order to approach an alchemical practice with another person, with another universe. Mm-hmm. And that implies to understand already, this is the ideal figure, to understand to a certain level how our mind works, how our emotion works, how our physical body works, and what is more important, our sexual glands work, how they are being stimulated mechanically, consciously, you name it. Because one thing is to learn Gnosis in a classroom, in a talk through the radio waves or internet waves, and another very different thing is to be in a partnership. We realize until that moment what is our level of psychological awakening. But that's the ideal picture of an alchemical relationship. So, but of course, we have to deal with what we have. This has always been my motto. Adolfo, you are sent to war to defend the last place that you have, that you're being in charge of. But you don't have a weapon. You don't have a sword. You don't have a gun. You don't have anything. You have you only find is a fork on your table. It's what you take, and you work with what you have. You work at the level that you are in. You work with in which situation you are. No matter what the mind tells you, this is too difficult, this is too easy. It doesn't matter. And the problem with the Gnostic teachings, when we receive intellectually and we admire personalities instead of following the work itself, is that we start romanticizing the path instead of making the path something factual, something real, because what we are talking about here is real. One aspect is, thanks to Christian, for example, talking about the practical aspect of transmitting the energy as a single person, and mentioning books of Master Samael, which is helped me to remind you that I've been studying the Perfect Matrimony, which is in the Gnostic teachings. Master Samael says that the perfect matrimony and the cosmic Christ are the synthesis of all religions. A relationship with somebody, with your partner. Just to think, just to evaluate, just to reflect on that we are working with this atomic energy, the same energy that create planets, solar systems, cosmos, creation. Tell us that this sexual energy is so important. It's the highest commodity within the human organism. Not only gods want it, demons want it, beasts, men want it. It's just because it's nature. Because if it's nature, can be used in many ways. In Gnosis, we're trying to understand the way that will help us to return to the main source. Whatever we're going to call it, the absolute. So when we think about what we have in our hands, what we have in a relationship, what we have as a single person, even if we cannot transmute, because we can actually acquire the qualities of the Christ as our teacher in an action, in the way that we change the way of thinking or approaching not just ourselves but people. That's the transformation, radical transformation, transcendental. So when we talk about this in terms of a relationship, we cannot get distracted in pettiness, things that have no importance. You know, like, I don't know, you didn't put enough sugar on my coffee. You did not make the bed. You didn't put enough salt on the whatever, the dish. Or, you know what, you didn't make me feel special on my birthday. You know, we need to understand deeply that among all the domestic things that we have to interact with every day, that we, you know, have to comply with some things because we live, you know, in an exterior world, you know, and we interact with people in society, etc. That's fine. It's perfect. But if you miss one of those, it is okay. And we need to also not create this high expectations about other people, especially our partners. Because I constantly hear this saying that, okay, I'm looking for the right person. You know, I want to be like Master Samael says, and it's in the book of Perfect Matrimony. He says, you know, to be aligned, being in alignment with the way of thinking of my partner, emotionally, astrally, sexually. That's ideal. That's beautiful. But that is if we don't have karma. You know, he's talking about a cosmic partnership. Okay, by the way, cosmic partners can find themselves in the teachings, but because we don't recognize each other, we're asleep, we just cross our paths and see you later because, you know, we are asleep sometimes. We have these high expectations created with good intentions, and we demand for our partners to be perfect in different ways, to be in this way and that way, A, B, C, D. The only requirement that we should look for a partner is to see that that person has the will power to change. And that will to change, if we have not go through the same process, if we don't know what it takes to defeat our own lust, what is to defeat our own pride, our own greed in different levels. For example, we will not recognize those steps in our partner and will demand for something that we don't have. Okay? So we have to be very careful in the way that we approach things, in the way that we ask for things. So another aspect is that the self-control, the control in our minds, and this power of perception of the work is a work of self-education. So remember that all this work should be based on facts, deeds. The practice of alchemy, sexual relation without the waste of the sexual waters, is not something that the master can teach you. Somebody can teach you, something that we have to learn on our own. And in that moment, we can measure the level of psychological work. In that moment, we define how much work needs to be done mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually. So we realize, for example, talking about the sublimation of this energy once it's transmuted, we need to understand that in certain paths of in certain parts of the initiatic path, the best way to sublimate our sexual waters, along with the classical music, the exercise, is offering to our Divine Mother a sacrifice of a defect.
Thank you, Adolfo. So now we would like to go into the process of this energy in the life of an initiate and how all of this falls into place. So for that, we'll give the mic to Christian.
Yes, thank you, Aníbal, again. And this is an important aspect of the sexual energy in relation to the initiatic path, because let's remember that in Gnosis, Gnosis is an initiatic path, right? It's not a school of personalities. It's not just a school that teaches us how to be successful in the social world, but above all, knowing that the external is a reflection of the internal, knowing that the life that you attract is the result of states of being, of levels of being, or we can say, they say in the Sufi tradition, right? There are states of the soul and dwellings of the soul, right? And so those dwellings attract the life that you have. And so we say that we have three realities: a physical, a psychological, and a spiritual reality. Most people focus on the physical life. Very few, compared to most people, right, are aware of the psychological aspect of their lives. They begin to realize that, oh, my psychology actually affects the way that I relate to others, the way that others relate to me, and so forth, right? So we begin to see the relationship between our psychology and our physical life, and that our psychological states, again, attract different things into our lives, either reject things or don't allow for things to come into our life, or they invite things into our life, people, events, and so forth. So that's our psychological life. But what about our spiritual life? It's something that most people, I think, and even I have to admit, before entering into this path, I thought the spiritual is all right, something that's up there, and now I'll unite with that when I lose this physical body or something, or when I die, I'll reach nirvana, or I'll go to hell, whatever you believe in, right? And the spiritual life has nothing to do with this physical life. But of course, in Gnosis, we know that is not how it is, right? The spirit is our higher self. The spirit is that inner source of transcendental wisdom, okay? Not just temporal wisdom, relative wisdom. Is a transcendental wisdom. It's a type of wisdom that when you connect with it, you connect with everyone else, because everyone else has that wisdom within them, deep in their soul. And so the initiatic path is the path of the soul getting closer and closer and closer to the being. And for that, we need to create, let's say, vehicles, or as Adolfo was saying, we have to go through a process of re-education, right? We need to re-educate our mind, our emotions, even the way that we act, the way that we move, related to the teaching of the three brains, right? We have to align those brains, re-educate those three brains, so that we can begin to actually perceive the higher realms. And recently I was, I saw a very funny meme on the internet, and I think you guys are familiar. You've probably seen it. It's this meme where like Batman is slapping Robin in the face, and Robin is saying, I will believe in it when I see it. And then Batman slaps him in the face and says, no, you will see it when you believe it, right? And so it takes a different perspective, right? this is actually even scientifically proven, that if you do not have in your mind, in your emotions, possibility of something, if you don't believe, if you don't have the concept that this is here or this exists, you simply won't see it, even when it's right in front of your face. And a very simple example, and it's a little embarrassing to share this example, but I was sitting on the table the other day, and I have my cell phone, and I have my cell phone is, the back of it is white, and then the screen is obviously black when it's not being used. And for some reason, I thought that I put my cell phone face down on the table. The table is black, and so the black screen was there, and it sort of just blended in with the table. And all of a sudden, I asked myself, "Where's my cell phone?" And I'm looking around the entire table, and I don't see my cell phone. Because in my mind, I was looking for something specific. I was looking for this white square on the table. And so my mind didn't put the two and two together, that actually it's here, but no, you're looking for something else. So then our mind begins to select, right, the things around us to see, okay, this is what I'm looking for. So this is why in Gnosis we say that we project our perceptions into the world, and we don't really see reality sometimes. We see our perception of reality. And so when we begin to transmute our sexual energy, what happens is this fire, this devouring fire, as Jesus says, I am a devouring fire. What is he devouring? He's devouring the wrong perceptions that we have of the world. So a person that begins to transmute their sexual energy begins to now open up certain channels, as they talk about in the yogic tradition, right? This inner energetic channels, Ida, Pingala, Sushumna, right? Your chakras begin to open up. And what are chakras? Chakras are senses. Just like you have physical senses, sight, touch, and so forth, you also have internal senses. And so when you begin to transmute your sexual energy, it's like you begin to put fuel in that car, in that vehicle that you've had there that you've never used. And all of a sudden you begin to, your chakras begin to awaken, your consciousness begins to awaken, and you begin to feel more in touch with yourself. Your ability to self-observe increases. Your ability to self-remember increases. Self-remembering is what's normally called mindfulness nowadays, right? Someone that transmutes their sexual energy can look into himself better than a person that does not transmute their sexual energy. And I think Adolfo just mentioned this as well, and I'm glad you did, because it's an important aspect. And that lecture that I mentioned in the beginning, the sexual hydrogen C12, a person that transmutes their sexual energy their body doesn't only create, we'll say, raw, normal sexual energy that everyone has, but we now begin to create two new different types of sexual energy. As Master Samael explains, or you can look at it as we have a stronger sexual energy, and that sexual energy allows us to observe ourselves, to see ourselves more in depth, as well as, obviously, with the awakening of the Kundalini, the awakening of that fire. When that fire becomes awakened, not just temporarily, as we experience Kundalini energy when we transmute our sexual energy, when we do certain practices of meditation or certain states of mystical states, we experience, right, a little bit of that powerful energy. But that energy awakens temporarily and then shuts back down. And when the Kundalini is awakened, that energy now, that chakra becomes open. And that's a permanent awakening of the Kundalini. What happens? Well, a few things happen. First of all, the person begins to have deeper spiritual yearnings. The person when the person awakens the Kundalini in the physical body, the person has an ability, more of an ability to relax the physical body, to concentrate, to focus. It brings more stability, mental stability, emotional stability. As you create through the practice of sexual alchemy, as you create those inner bodies, the inner Merkaba, as they refer to it in the Kabbalistic tradition, as you raise your 7 serpents from the Hindustani tradition, right? Those 7 serpents are your inner bodies. And what happens is, when you create the physical body, you begin to be more in control of your physical body. You conquer the stage of the fakir, right? As you create an astral body, what happens? You begin to feel more in control of your emotions. Your emotions become more steady. You become a monk, right? And then, as you continue to transmute your sexual energy through the practice of sexual alchemy, that energy begins to create another body, which is the body of the mind, right? And you begin to have more control of your mind, and your consciousness now begins to have more of a hold of your mind, and you're more in control of your thoughts, you're more in control of your feelings, and of course of your actions. So your physical life, because of this internal spiritual process that's happening within you, it begins to now allow you to take control of your physical life. And this is why I say that in the beginning, that the spiritual path, the initiatic path, gives you really control over your life. Before the awakening of the Kundalini, before the creation of the bodies, we have less and less and less control of our own lives. And so that's why the transmutation of the energy is important. And these are just a few of the wonderful experiences that you begin to go through as you transmute your sexual energy. You obviously feel more connected to your being. You feel those spiritual yearnings more. You feel more magnetism. You become more sensitive to energies, and so forth. So, so I think that's about as much as I can share for now. Thank you, Aníbal.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christian. So now let's go to Adolfo. Once the initiate has passed through all the processes of the transmutation of the sexual energy, what happens? Could you tell us what the impact is on humanity at this level? To have an initiate that uses the sexual energy in a revolutionary way as it was meant to be used?
Well, thank you so much, Aníbal. Thank you, Christian, for depicting the initiatic path. Master Samael told us that the objective of our studies is to incarnate the Christ. And the incarnation of the Christ is a beautiful process. What really leads an initiate towards its path is a series of events, renunciations, and the gainings are actually internal. And the first or second part of my talk, I talk about people that are not, because of personal situations, health or age, they cannot transmute. I would like to share with you a situation that happened to students that travel from all over the world to take the course to become a missionary. And they travel for months because in those times, the people that Master Samael reached, they didn't have the financial means. So by the time that they got into Mexico and the monastery, they were, hungry, no money, their clothes were all, ripped. And there was a lady there that always supported Master Samael and Mr. Atlantis. It's an older lady, probably in her late 80s, early 90s. I don't remember her name. But when she's noticed that any of these young people, men or women, were in need of something, like she saw their shirt, she saw their pants. They, make sure that they have a hot meal, and it's something very interesting. This lady didn't have education. This lady didn't have preparation, intellectual preparation. She wasn't transmuting the sexual waters because of her age. And something interesting happened during this course, because it was a missionary course. Master Samael shared an internal experience in which this old lady was being initiated in the internal world for her actions in the physical dimension. So it is why I said this class, this teaching is meant to be for everybody, and all of us, have to go through this in order to understand that what it guides, what gives us the strength, is the inner Christ, when the sexual energy is taking shape within ourselves, when that cubic stone that wasn't cubic at the beginning now is being taking that form. Another aspect is that in the process of this of the travel of this sexual energy, many things happen in the life of an initiate. Many things, up and downs, and some tests are so difficult that some masters, when they look back in time, they're probably asking themselves, how did I go through this? And it's not us, it's not them themselves, but it's the sexual energy that is being transformed into the Christ and helping to every person to go through life. In this case, the initiatic path. So, and of course, while we have defects, while we are imperfect, a person still can crystallize that energy and celebrate the Christmas of the heart. And it's a very beautiful moment in the life of an initiate. When we start these teachings, when we step into a Gnostic school for first time, it's beautiful, because we have no idea where we're getting into, what we are learning. But every person, the strongest, it's a very strong statement that we send to the world, to the universe. But there is, but when the initiate does his first pranayama, that itself sends a strong statement to the cosmos, to the absolute, to the mineral kingdom, everywhere. Not to the law, actually, because for first time, this person, whoever that is, any of us, is doing something different after lifetimes and lifetimes of rolling and rolling and rolling in this mechanical wheel. So what we need to realize, that through life and through the use of this sexual energy, what we are acquiring are the virtues and the properties and qualities of the Christ. The ones that we read in the stories that we read about the Christian tradition, about Jesus the Christ, or Buddha, or Manco Capac, or any other initiate that incarnate the Christ, are the same, because they start incarnating the process of all this, the incarnation of those qualities that we talk at the beginning of this class. They're crystallizing that within themselves. They're perfecting those. So, and of course, having defects, the Christ is not interested. And we're here talking about the result of all these efforts and transformations, because it's an effort to take away from lust, to take away from pride, to take away from resentments, to take away from our own ego, what they enjoy the most in this high commodity, which is our sexual energy. then um, then the result is that in the past we got in trouble with the law because we were asleep. We didn't know the correct use of this energy, and now this energy show us or teach us how to be ethical, and in that also doesn't, it might not create conflict with the law, but it might create conflict with humanity. And it's why initiates are not understood. And it's the path that, and then it's a very interesting situation, because if we study, if we are more familiar with the Christian tradition, if we study how all the phases of the initiatic path that Jesus the Master have to go through, and the initiate have to understand in the parallel way that type of psychology of the inner Christ, because the inner Christ is here not just to instruct us or to teach us about those defects that are very difficult, because the initiate have to show with deeds its intent, not just its intention, but with deeds, that he wants to leave behind all this life of disorder, chaos, and unconscious way of living. And that takes the three factors of the revolution of the consciousness. And just to clarify, sacrifice for humanity doesn't imply only teaching, Implies, for example, what you just mentioned about this old lady in the monastery. So we can help in different ways. We can sublimate the energy with the depth of our own personal interest. And so what the initiate realizes in all its efforts that some defects, like lust, for example, in all its manifestations, are just we can understand to a certain level, because other levels are very deep in our subconsciousness, and because of the law, we are not allowed to see certain things. What happened is we cannot expect, in other words, to solve a problem just that we create for several lifetimes since Lemuria in a few years. And if that happens, it's because we're paying a lot of karma, and because already the Christ is coming within. It's the Christ who takes over the most difficult psychological processes. It's a Christ that would take us back to the absolute. And on that, do not expect perfection. Imperfection in the interaction with your beloved ones, especially. The inner Christ, when it comes to us, what is looking is for the most imperfect beings. When I say, when we talk about, let's say, the awakening of the fire, one night with our partner, and maybe we are having, let's say, a petty argument next morning. One time we were, a few hours before, we were having the best, transcendental experience, and we might fall into, a silly thing. That we have to contrast that, to understand that we are working with sacred energy, with superior aspects of it. And in that also, we are still imperfect. Is the Christ the one that is perfect itself, and try to help us, while the sexual energy becomes the messenger in between the absolute and ourself, whoever we are. So the different scriptures, especially in the Christian tradition, when it talks about who the Master Jesus addressed itself to, he addressed itself to the blind, to the deaf, to the corrupt. And what he's telling us, of course, is addressing the imperfect part of our own nature. And that's the main aspect. We have to recognize that in order to be accepted by that substance within ourselves, cosmic substance, and be transformed by it. The past of the sexual energy is the most transcendental aspect of our lives, and not of our lives only, but it will have a strong repercussion or consequence in our existence, wherever we are going next. Whatever it happened in life, just move forward. Fix what you have to fix and move forward. If you look back, it's just to fix, to try not to make the same mistake over and over again and move forward. Nobody's perfect yet. Perfect is the Father, as Master Samal says.
Very well, guys. We've reached the end of the talk, so I guess we'll take a short break to allow for questions from our listeners, and we'll be right back after a short pause.